welcome to today's episode where we're going to look at one of the new features that CodeCatalyst has recently announced, and I'm very glad to have Daniel on with me, who has helped to build this feature and bring this to production. Daniel, great to have you on the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
It's great that you spent your free time with me to do a little bit of a recording on something that you've been working on for a few, I guess, weeks, maybe month, I don't know. So what are we going to look at today?
Yeah, we're going to look at Amazon CodeCatalyst and how it now has the ability to support using the same billing account for multiple CodeCatalyst spaces. And this also enables a single CodeCatalyst, or I guess IAM Identity Center instance to have multiple CodeCatalyst spaces associated with it.
Wait, but this means that there's a change in the way that the billing works, right? So when CodeCatalyst was announced, and all of my other videos talk about, you can only have one CodeCatalyst per AWS account, one CodeCatalyst space per AWS account. So this has now been changed?
Yeah, so like a single AWS account can have like many CodeCatalyst spaces that are where that account is set as the billing account. So yeah, that's definitely changed.
Okay, cool. That enables a few possibilities as well. Now, if we look at how we anticipate especially enterprises to use CodeCatalyst, I remember when I talked to the product management a year ago or maybe 1.5 years ago, we said that the idea is that one enterprise or one organization would always have exactly one space. Now, with this new functionality, it seems like that's changing. What's your take on that?
Yeah, so it's dependent on the organization. So I would, if I was talking to a customer, I would 9 times out of 10 still recommend they only have one space. That one space can connect to many AWS accounts in many regions and deploy to all of them. So having one space does have a lot of advantages, because when you're in a single space, you have like shared search. It's very collaborative. Users can have access to like all the projects that are in there. There's still, role-based permissions. So like if you need to keep some users from having access to certain projects, you can. So like it's when you have multiple spaces, which you can't do now, you have to have specific reasons for wanting to do that. And one of those reasons might be you want to bill them very separately, right? Now you're using the same billing account, but they're going to show up as being billed 2 separate accounts, or I'm sorry, as separate spaces. So you can kind of separate the billing.
Yeah.
So that's one use case. The other use case is if you have like different parts of your business that are so separate that there's no collaboration involved, it would make sense to have multiple spaces in that situation as well.
And there is another thing that I think makes this valuable, which is the possibility to have one space where you're using the standard tier and one space where you're using the enterprise tier within the same organization, right? I think that might also be valuable. So if you have a kind of people experiencing and trying things out, they could be on the free tier and or on the standard tier without the need to upgrade to the enterprise tier, and that would lower the costs as well, as CodeCatalyst is still built per user as far as I'm aware.
Yeah, that's right. And there's things about the billing that people aren't always aware of, but like you can have people in the enterprise tier that aren't billed if they only have the limited access role and read-only roles, then they actually don't get billed. So those users can be in there and actually provide a lot of value. Like if you have those roles just read-only on every project, you can see everything that the developers are doing, but you're not really an active user of the product, so you're not getting billed. So like maybe you'd give those roles to like your CEO. So someone you don't want actually doing anything in there, but they kind of deserve the visibility. So
yeah, that makes sense. I knew about that possibility, right? But still, I'm not sure how much read-only users can do. Maybe something that would be good here would be to get an approver role, which would also not count for billing. I think that's something that we can get back to the team as an idea. Cool. So let's look at that. And I would propose that we try to get this activated in one of my accounts, and you give me some thoughts and feedback on what I should be aware of. And maybe you can walk me through what the challenges were on your side to get this implemented, because that's the interesting piece. So
Yep.
let's start with the blog post, and I'm going to take the lead and share the screen with that. And then I'm going to look at setting this up. And maybe you can start talking about when did you start working on this functionality? Can you share that with us, or is that hidden and private?
So we the billing aspect I can't speak to. The billing aspect was actually the blocker, and I won't go into that too much right now. But when we were starting on the SSO effort, that would have been like 2022, early like February, and then we launched right before reInvent. The challenge actually ended up being like for multi-space in particular, we ended up designing the whole thing with multi-space in mind. So a lot of this functionality was just ready.
Okay.
We just had constraints that we put in to prevent it, and it ended up being the billing was the issue. In order to actually launch multi-space, we had to make it so that a billing account could service multiple spaces. That was really the only blocker. So
okay, yeah, makes sense.
So it's correct that we started working on this, weeks ago, but it's also correct that it was started early last year as well. So
cool. So let's have a look on my setup, and then we're gonna see how we kind of can activate this feature. And I'm a typical developer, so I hate reading documentation. Which is why I brought you on to help me walk through this. So I have a space here, which currently is with my builder ID. This space is linked to a specific account, which you can see over here is a specific account name that I have, and it is currently on the free tier. So it doesn't do a lot of things. And this is not enabled with single sign-on, right? So here's the button to get this enabled. At least that's what it says over here. But let's have a look on what I need to know to activate this. If I now go back to an account, this is a different one. As you can see, this is a different AWS CodeCatalyst account. This is also on the free tier. This is pointing to an account name that has a different account name, but it has the same account ID, so it's the same account. This one is enabled with single sign-on. If I look at the access portal that I have, you will see there's multiple accounts, but there's also one application. Now, if I add a second space here, my expectation would be that there's going to be a second application coming up here, or is this wrong?
It would just be a single application. You would see multiple spaces in the normal place where you see multiple spaces.
Okay, so that would,
like with a builder.
Yeah, so I would then see it over here. If I go to all spaces.
Correct.
Okay, cool. So the challenge for the next, I hope, 15 minutes is that we're going to add this locket.shared account into this IAM Identity Center. And as I don't know how to do that, help me. What do I need to do?
Yep. So the first thing we have to do is change your builder IDA space to use the same billing account as your IAM Identity Center instance,
Okay.
or wherever you want, wherever your application was built.
That is already the case. So the billing account for this one is the same as the other one. We will see that if we go into the settings over here, and we will see the account ID. It's just set up differently. So let's just have a look to ensure that. This will send me now to the billing console itself, which makes sense. But we can see over here that this is the account at the end, right? Which essentially is the same one as the one that we see in the background.
Yep, I agree. It's the same.
Now,
cool.
Why is this already the case? Because my accounts have been special for over 20 months. And because of that, I've had this already set up. But everyone else that tries to use this functionality first needs to go to the account that he or she wants to move into the CodeCatalyst space, needs to go over here and change the account to be used in the billing.
Yep.
So what's the next step?
Well, the next step would be go to the IAM Identity Center, actually the CodeCatalyst AWS console. So within AWS, you have to go to the AWS console.
So that's at the end where I'm at now, right? So I
Mm-hmm.
have my spaces over here. I already have 2 spaces connected to this one.
Right. So one of those is your SSO space, and the other one would be your Builder ID space.
This is interesting because this is my SSO space and this is my
Mhm.
builder ID space, but we are in Oregon here. If we go to Ireland, we're gonna see a different amount of spaces visible over here. As you can see, the one that we are interested in is the locate.shared, which we want to get
Yep.
into the IAM instance. So I guess I'm just gonna click on it.
Yep.
And with that, I would associate this would be the one, I guess.
That's
guess.
right.
Where's the difference between those 2 buttons?
I think they might be the same, although it is interesting that they're. Well, no. Okay, so the second one is saying that there's no application. That's interesting. Try clicking on the. I'd like to kind of see what both of them do. Try clicking on the top one.
Okay. Okay, that's the application that I was expecting. So let's see what the other button
I
does.
see. Yeah. Let's go back and see what that does.
Okay, so this one. What does this
might
one do?
be. Okay, so this one sent you to the CodeCatalyst console page that kind of summarizes your Identity Center connected spaces.
But there should be one
So
already connected.
right, but you're in the Ireland region,
Okay, makes sense.
and your other space is in the U.S. region.
So which button do you like more? I would use this one. This sounds like
Yeah, that one's probably the easier one. Yes.
okay. So first feedback to anyone watching this: this is strange. It confuses me.
Yep. Yep.
Okay, so I'm gonna add that to this IAM application because that's the one that I actually see over here in my console as well, right? So this makes sense. Don't tell me we're done, are we?
It looks like you're done.
That was too easy, and it did not even warn me because now
Yeah.
my builder ID doesn't have access to this one anymore.
Right.
Which is strange. It should have told me. Okay, let's see what happens if I reload my browser in the background. Oh, I really lost access. That's bad. Well, but okay, it's not that bad because
it should have warned you.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure because at the end I'm already in the account where I can also remove that again at the end. So the interesting piece would now be okay. Let's first finish off now and see if that actually works. So this actually means that if I now go into, I'm gonna close my session with CodeCatalyst over here. And just close this browser. I'm gonna go back to my access portal and I'm going to open CodeCatalyst up again. And my expectation would be that I now have both spaces available. Let's see if that's what we get. Okay. Oh, I think we missed something. There must be a permissions issue somewhere. Let me try to see if I can fix that. So back into the AWS console. I do have the connection set up for locate.shared. I do have some roles over here. But I don't know. No, you need to help me.
Yeah. Click on the edit button. That might be it.
What does this do in the background?
It should just be loading, like calling a list API.
There's no groups connected to the space. That is interesting. Okay, so I'm going to add that one because that's the one that I'm part of. I'm also going to add myself as a user, as an administrator. I can also add that group only, which is good. And now And now a simple reload should solve that, or do I need to relog in?
In most cases, a reload would solve it. There are some cases though where you'd have to log in, but since you've set yourself as the administrator, it should be pretty quick.
Yay! There it is. Cool. That's great. So now I have access to both spaces, and I can now configure roles and permissions for the space as well, based on the teams that I have already set up, I guess, right? So I can now, I guess there is no team connected over here yet because that's a single sign-on feature, but I could now say that over here, admin team, whatever, needs to get space administrator permissions, and I can use existing membership groups for that. Perfect.
Yep.
This was easier than I expected, I need to admit.
Yep. So there are some nuances that you may have not seen. Like it looked like initially that you had groups connected to this space, and then you were a bit surprised that you didn't have access. There's actually two different types of groups, right? There's kind of like this groups that are from my IAM Identity Center assigned to CodeCatalyst.
Okay.
That lets you authenticate, log in. And then there's other types of groups that get assigned to the space that actually gives you a role within the space. And you have to, in order to access a space, you have to have both.
Yeah, that is
and
that is
so
a
what
bit
we were
confusing,
missing was
yeah.
that second guy.
Yeah,
It is, but what it enables is it enables you to have some groups that are assigned to one space and some groups that are assigned to the other, or both. Otherwise, like everybody would just be in every space, which we knew a lot of organizations would want to have separation. So
yeah, that makes sense. So now we're done with activating, and this looks all good. What happens if I want to go back to my builder ID authentication? Because so for this space that we just activated, I have a bunch of people that have don't have access to my IAM Identity Center instance yet. So I'm gonna need to invite people like Alex to get access to parts of this repositories. Now, of course, I can do that, but let's think of what would happen if I want to go back. Want to try that?
Can you share?
Yeah, let's try that.
Yep. Can you share again?
So now I assume we need to go into the AWS console again.
Well, actually, you need to go to the CodeCatalyst console.
In the console.
Yeah.
Okay. So
no. I'm sorry. I meant like CodeCatalyst as a product,
okay.
not the AWS
I'm
console.
sorry.
Yeah.
That's okay.
All right.
So
now go up to the question mark in the top right, I think. And hit create a support case.
Why is that?
And then I'm not sure which one it would be. Probably either one.
I guess account and billing.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Which one?
Yeah, I would do. Well, sorry. Can you look at the service options again? I don't think it would be billing. I think it would just be account.
Account. Change account details, or
maybe ownership transfer, or unable to access my account. Either one.
Okay. So what does this button do then over here? So if we just looked at this one, we had what was that? I think over here, disassociate space from Identity Center.
Yep. So you can do that, and that'll remove your access. So if you want to try that, you can certainly do it. And it'll remove your access, and your users will no longer have access to that space. But the only way to get a builder ID back in is through a support ticket at this time.
Okay. So. But now if I remove this from the association, then the space will still be there. But the
space will still be there.
Okay.
Yep.
But how?
But it'll be sort of orphaned. Sorry.
Yeah. No. It would be sort of orphaned, and I would need to set it up to connect with the Identity Center again to then regain access at the end. Right. Cool. Yeah, that makes sense. And I think this is important to know if you if you want to try more around this and play around with it, right, then that might be something that you would be hitting. Okay, so now I already did a video on that, but I would now need to get more people assigned to the space and give them the relevant permissions. What about this piece over here? It says like space administrators, and then it says to view or remove space administrators, go to the CodeCatalyst console. Now, what that means I can add new people here, but I cannot remove them, right?
Yeah, so that's exactly right. You can so the idea is like this is sort of for bootstrapping.
Okay.
Like this initial space administrator you set up here is just so that you can get someone into the space to start setting things up. And then after that, you don't really need them anymore because you can set up people from within CodeCatalyst to be the space admins.
Okay, that makes sense. Cool. Good. So then maybe last question before I stop sharing my screen is, do you see that we will be getting more information about these kind of things? So as you can see, I have a bunch of spaces connected to this instance, and I can see a lot of organizations now starting to do that as well. Now, how do I get insights into how many people have access to these spaces and these kind of things in a more global way? Because now we're going away from CodeCatalyst having one space per organization. We have multiple ones, so we need some more oversight. Is that something that you've been discussing with the team about, and where you think that there will be some advancements in that direction or not?
So I totally agree. We need better visibility. Within this pane of glass, we don't really have that. Unfortunately, probably the best pane of glass you have is your billing billing report. So within CodeCatalyst itself, you can actually see that pretty easily by just viewing the members. But someone with access to the billing account might not necessarily access or care to access CodeCatalyst. So it is something where you'd want to see it in both places.
Cool. And then another one that came up, like we talked about different regions and stuff like that. As you can see, we are now in CodeCatalyst in Ireland. The IAM Identity Center, however, lives in Frankfurt. This space lives in Ireland, I think. But if I now change to Frankfurt, to Oregon for this console, I would see a different space over here. This kind of is, so first of all, Johannes messed up his setup. Yes, yay. Secondly, this is kind of a mess, isn't it?
Yes and no. CodeCatalyst itself, it's an off-console product. Like it doesn't really exist on the CodeCatalyst console. What you're seeing here on the AWS console is kind of like a portal into CodeCatalyst, but we have to treat CodeCatalyst itself like it's a global product, right? So even if you create a space in a particular region, whether it's US West 2 or EU West 1, the users you log in with, whether they're Builder ID or IAM Identity Center, we can't necessarily predict where those users are going to be because you could disconnect your space and set it up with an identity center in a different region, right? So we kind of have to treat it a bit more global. Now it is interesting that in the list of spaces, some show up. Your US West 2 spaces show up in US West 2. Your EU West 1 show up there as well. But I believe once you connect it with IAM Identity Center, they start showing up everywhere. Is that what we were observing? No. Okay.
No, they are not. So for me, the next kind of, that was a preparing question for the next question, which is going to be, why is this not a global service? Like IAM is service, right? The IAM is also global. So potentially the CodeCatalyst console, the CodeCatalyst information in the console should also be global. And I don't know, but that would have been my thought, right? Do you happen to know why that's not the case?
I don't know much. Think of it this way: it's sort of global, but also sort of regional. But the stuff you're connecting to, like IAM Identity Center, that is a regional service. It's a regional service that we have to allow you to set up an IAM Identity Center from one region to use a CodeCatalyst space in a different region. And the space itself is regional. The IAM Identity Center is regional, but CodeCatalyst, above the space level is a global service. So it's it's a very interesting mix. I don't recall specifically why we chose a regional dashboard or console instead of a global one. I do know that it is a bit more like there's other AWS console like services on the AWS console that behave the same way. So it may have been they were just looked to one of those other services for the convention.
Great. I personally like it very much to have AWS CodeCatalyst out of the console, but I've been getting some remarks on it should be part of the console instead of being a separate service. What's your current take on that? Where do you think does it belong? Inside the console or outside the console? Do you have a personal opinion on that?
Well, it should exist outside of the console, but there needs to be a way for console, not just the console, but like for APIs and CodeCatalyst to be invoked via the normal like SIG-v4 signing process, right? Which you generally cannot do today. So like I don't want to say both, but in general, I would say it should be off console because it's a developer experience. You don't necessarily want all your developers in every single AWS account that you have, especially for for doing development work to non-production accounts that are eventually, if there's a pipeline that's eventually going to, throw it into production as well. I mean, you wouldn't say that like, a different similar product like GitHub or Bitbucket or GitLab, you wouldn't say any of those should be on the console, right? So it's hard to say that CodeCatalyst should be in one perspective, but we should have a lot better integration. I do agree with that.
Thank you so much for backing me up on that opinion, because that's mine as well. And I've been challenged by a few people in the community telling me regularly, Johannes, this needs to go into the console. Please let the service team know. And I've always been pushing back with exactly the same reasons. Cool. Yep. Daniel, we are again at over 25 minutes, which was more than I expected to take today. Thank you so much for making this a great conversation. Where can people find more about you? What's the best way to reach you?
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn under LinkedIn/Daniel Dersch. just my name. That'd be the best place to find me. I do have a newsletter on Substack as well called Cheat Code. I have unfortunately not been able to write too much this year though. So.
Yeah, but that might change again going forward. So if you're interested to hear what Daniel is up next and what he's going to contribute in the next month, then sign up to that newsletter. And yeah, thank you once again for coming on, explaining what you have built and giving us some more background on how difficult it is to set up billing for inside AWS. So thanks again. Bye-bye.